Introduce the candidates here. The candidates are running for the judgeship or for probate. Sorry, I'll get it right. Probate judge. We have current incumbent Judge Scott here. His first name is Justus Scott. Okay, he's been justice for. Okay. And we have Prosecutor Mike Sharkey here, who's also running for that same position. Wish them both a lot of luck, and we'll get started here in just a second, okay? And they're going to tell you about their background right now. Okay, so we're going to start with the judge here. And Judge, can you tell people a little bit about your history, please?
Good evening. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Yes, this is my name. It was my grandfather's name. He was born in Germany. My name is Justus Scott. I'm your probate judge. I've been working for you for 39 years now. I started out in 1979 in the prosecutor's office in the lowest position, and I worked every job in the prosecutor's office, gaining experience as I went. I became the chief assistant prosecutor in 1983, the elected prosecutor in 1992. When we moved into the new building, I stood there as the lowest guy on the totem pole. I looked down the hall, and I said, I'm going to be the prosecutor someday. I said, Scott, how are you going to do that? This isn't a made-up story. I actually did this. I said, I'm going to do it by working hard. I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to actually listen to people and then try to help them with their problems. And that's what I set out to do every day, consciously, helping people, listening to them, and trying to fix their problems, help them with their problems, lead them in the right direction, not just get a conviction, not just make up my mind before I went out there, but actually help people. As your elected prosecutor, I felt it was my job, the attorney for the people, to personally try the toughest cases in the county. So I tried the murders, the rapes, the armed robberies, the breaking and enterings, the drug cases. I was the head of a multi-county grand jury with Tuscola and Huron counties. I've tried every kind of case personally that you can possibly try in the prosecutor's office, and I was very successful at it. When I felt I'd done it all, when I was ready, I decided to run for probate court judge. Judge Preisel, a great man, he couldn't run again because of an age limit. He did a good job. I wanted to follow in his footsteps. So I ran. I won by about 65% of the vote, and I've been the probate family court judge. It's combined with family court ever since. I've run unopposed twice, and now after 17 and a half years, the first time I have a challenger. Probate court traditionally was everything with a legal disability. Estates, trusts, guardianships, and conservatorships where people can't make their own decisions anymore, mentally ill, juveniles, abuse and neglect cases, and adoptions, and then it's combined with family court. I've become virtually, as 39 years of actually doing these cases, virtually an expert in this area. We put on seminars to train the attorneys every year. So I look at it kind of like heart surgery. Who do you want to handle the most important things in your life, your family, your children, the guy with experience, or a new guy who wants to give it a try? Mike?
Good evening. I don't know if I need this. Let's try it without it first. I'm going to set this down.
We need it for...
Oh, you need it for the recording? Okay. All right. I think most of you know me, know of me. This community of ours is one that I grew up here. I went to school here. I raised my family here. Been involved in all sorts of community activities, from chairman of the Gus Macker basketball tournament to 4-H participation with the kids and the horses. I probably got some recognition because you were all aware of a case that happened a couple years ago when the former prosecuting attorney initiated criminal charges against our sitting circuit judge. I was asked to represent the judge, and I did so successfully. All charges were dismissed, and he's back on the bench. But in that process, I discovered all sorts of unsavory and unethical and what I believe to be illegal activities that took place in that prosecutor's office, and I dared to get involved. I hadn't been involved in politics before. I don't consider myself a politician, but I felt somebody had to do something to do the right thing and stand up, so I dared to get involved. And that's what this process is about today. I dared to get involved. I ran in this community, to my humble surprise, I won. Incumbents do not get unseated, and there's a reason for that. They stick together. They recruit each other to create this sort of formidable bond that you can't challenge. And that's what's happening here. I'm running for this judge position because I don't like what's going on in the courthouse. I don't like the favored treatment that some get and some don't. To me, if you're going to be a judge or you're going to be the prosecutor, by God, you better treat everybody fairly. And that's why I'm running, because people aren't being treated fairly. And we'll get to that as the evening progresses here on the specific details. And I've done my job. I've had to report the misdeeds of the former prosecutor, and I've also reported the misdeeds of this judge. And we'll get to that, hopefully, and you will see. And you should know what's going on in your courthouse. You should know who's making decisions that relate to your cases.
Okay, this part of our meeting is going to be question and answers. And if you have a question, write it on that 3x5 card and raise your hand at this point and we'll pick it up. Our moderator is Myra Bray over here in the corner. She does a great job at this. And she's going to ask the questions. Again, they're going to be same question to each person. They'll take turns going first on this. Okay? Are you ready, Myra?
Okay, the first one will kind of expand on what you guys just talked about, but it says, please explain the job description of the probate judge and your qualifications for this elected position.
Who's going first?
Mr. Sharkey?
I've already heard it, Mike.
Okay, well, I'll just sit down then. The qualifications for the job of probate judge is that you have to be a lawyer. And a few years back, they did make the rule to become a judge, you have to at least have 5 years of experience. Those are the minimum requirements to do it. But what is really required, and what you should think strong about, is who has the integrity to make the right decisions. And I believe I'm the most qualified for that. And I believe that I have, because of my experience in the practice of law, for 30 years I've been in private practice. I've represented the good people of this community for many years in all courts all across this state. Federal courts, state courts, appellate courts. I've done it all. I've tried cases from murder, personal injury cases, from triple homicides, all the way to a small little issue of transferring a piece of property to maybe an estate or to a deed to transfer some property. And I've represented just about anyone who needed help in a divorce matter, anyone who needed any help in any type of a criminal matter.
Well, I am the probate judge, and I've been doing it for 17 and a half years. So not only do we do the probate work, the estates, where we have fights about wills, and you have to understand the law. You have to know what the law is so you can tell the attorneys and the clients and make those rulings. And you do guardianships and conservatorships. Those are very important because you're protecting people who can't protect themselves. I've had to tell people, protect them from their own self, where they've given hundreds of thousands of dollars to fake charities or fake issues in Nigeria, where they're conned and told you won the lottery, and I have to explain to them they can't do that. We also protect the rights of children. Sometimes they're abused by their parents. I have to step in and make those hard decisions. And it's difficult. There's all sorts of regulations, and if you do it wrong, the federal government can come in a year later and review your cases, and they review a small sample. If they find a few of those cases are bad, they can deny the payments for the placement of those children for all your cases, and suddenly entire county owes $500,000, and we might have to lay people off. So it's very, very important to know the law and follow the law and get it right each and every time, or it can be a disaster. These are important cases. Also, divorces with children. You have to follow the best interest standards under the state of Michigan. If you don't, those cases are appealed, they come back, and you have to do them over again, and you upset that entire family for a much longer time. This is an important job. Protecting people's rights, protecting the rights of people who can't protect themselves. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is, how do you plan to deal with moms and dads on drugs with children, with young children at home? And Judge Scott, you can answer this one first.
Well, myself, along with Judge Barnard and Judge Holoka, we've already addressed that. We've started some specialty courts. We have a drug court where instead of these people being prosecuted, put in jail, just told it's your problem, they're brought in every week. They're addressed with an entire team of experts. We bring together the resources of the community mental health, drug assessments. We help them not only get off drugs, we help them find a job, and we help them find a place to live, and we help support them to get off the opioids, because the result is if they're off opioids, if they try to stop and they go back on, they die from opioid overdose. It's a crisis. 125 people die every year, every day in this country, and 17 people died in Lapeer County from drug overdose. I do the same thing in probate court with the abuse and neglect cases. The parents, we have them all the time. They choose drugs over their children, and so we do the same thing. We apply intensive probationary services. We bring to bear the resources of the community. We make them have assessments, psychological evaluations, drug testing weekly. Every time they see their children, we're drug testing to make sure they're not high on drugs, to try to save their lives so they can save their children's lives. And if they don't, then those children become a burden on the rest of us to support. Adoptions are the other side of that coin sometimes, but we try to help the parents get off the drugs so they can take care of their children.
Let me explain a few things about the drug court and how this process works, and what you need to understand about what I'm doing and what the courts are doing. And we're not entirely on the same page. My interest and my objective is to make sure that this community is protected. I am not in favor of putting everybody into the drug court. I was at a function of the Families Against Narcotics, and they had a speaker who stood up and addressed the crowd and said, 100% of those who go through the criminal justice system have drug or alcohol-related problems. That may be. But what I'm concerned about, and what I'm concerned about most, is protecting you to where these people just don't get a free pass and they abuse the system and bypass the system and nothing ever changes. We have become, in the criminal justice system, a bunch of enablers. The criminal process where I have somebody who has 10, 20, 30. 2 weeks ago I had somebody with 60 prior offenses. These are drug-related offenses. They've been through every therapeutic drug treatment program there is. What kind of success do we have with those? What's fundamentally missing about our criminal justice system is the ability to earn some sort of pass. If you're going to go through the criminal justice system in the drug courts, by God, you better get some benefit from it. But if you're not going to, if you're going to be going through this program, you have to get some benefit of it. It can't be a system where it's just a bypass. Now, I've been in private practice, and I've represented clients who have told me, as odd as this may sound here, I would just rather do the jail. And these are set up for failure. Sometimes you go through the process and you don't succeed at all here, and we just keep coming back and doing the same thing over again.
You can answer the next question first. If you observed a party in your courtroom being poorly represented or by an unprepared or ineffective lawyer, how would you handle the situation?
Ethically, I'm obligated as the prosecuting attorney to make sure that the criminal defendant who I have charged has appropriate representation. That may seem kind of strange for those of you who aren't in the system every day, but that is an ethical requirement. But I am proud to say that we have a fairly good bar where we have court-appointed attorneys who do a good job. And right now, we are in the process of the County Board of Commissioners through the administration has applied and been approved for a grant to overhaul the entire public defender's office. They have, we will be receiving a grant in the amount of $376,000 for the criminal defendants to challenge me. And when we'll get into this, I don't know if today is the day for it, but you may have heard I don't necessarily have the best rapport with the County Board of Commissioners. And here's why. The grant that they put forward is for $376,000 that I've talked about here. And for example, take one issue, they've proposed $50,000 for expert witness fees. Now, some of you may have read in the county press that there was no money in the line item for the prosecutor for expert witness fees, but I needed $15,000. And they made a big to-do about it as if I didn't know what I was doing by managing the office. Now, how can the same administration put $50,000 in the bank, if you will, for the defense and give me a big fat zero? If we had more time to talk, we could get into the difference here and what I call the good old boy network. And Justus Scott is part of that. And that's why I'm running, and that's what I intend to do, is to clean it up.
Well, actually, the question was, what do you deal with an attorney who isn't actually representing their client? I've done that. I've had other attorneys complain to me they smell alcohol on an attorney's breath. I've smelled alcohol on an attorney's breath. I've had attorneys complain to me they smell marijuana on an attorney. I didn't personally smell marijuana, but I take those guys back. I talk to them in my office. I tell them that this can't happen again, or I'm going to have to report it. In the past, I've talked to other people who are friends with this person and tell them, I believe there's a problem. We need to deal with it before it gets out of control. If it's in the courtroom and they're not representing their client, I give the client an opportunity to ask for, if it's a court-appointed lawyer, a different attorney. And I've removed attorneys and appointed different attorneys when the parties complain for one reason or another. I've had them say they smell alcohol in their breath. I've had them say he's giving me bad advice, or I don't agree with what he's saying, and I take steps to make sure that people get what they're entitled to. Fair representation, their day in court to present their case fairly and adequately with appropriate representation. I don't know what we're talking about with he didn't get money from the Board of Commissioners, but I don't have anything to do with that. Thank you.
You can stay up for the next question. What injustices have you witnessed in the courtroom, and what was your response to those events?
Injustices. I'm the judge. If I see an injustice, I rule in favor of the other side. If I feel that someone's badgering or taking advantage or unfairly presenting a case, exaggerating things, lying about things, I take that all into consideration, and that's part of how I judge the person, how I judge their credibility. If you see someone constantly over-exaggerating things, constantly getting caught in lies, then I don't judge them with very high credibility, and that results normally in them losing the case. So if you're acting inappropriately, if you yell out, normally I warn them. Today I warned a lady 3 times, and then I said, I can find you in contempt. I can fine you up to $7,500. I can put you in jail up to 93 days. I don't want to do any of those things, but you need to be quiet. You'll be given your fair opportunity when it's your turn, but we have to take this one at a time. It's very important that we don't have people yelling because we're making a record. If there's 2 or 3 people talking at a time, the recording is blurred. We don't have a legal record to go from. So I'm the referee in the case. I have to control the process and make sure it's done fairly, so we have a record that can be appealed from. And I fine people. I've actually put people in custody. I've actually called the deputies up and said, you're in contempt, and put them in jail. Very seldom, but I've done that because it's my job to control the courtroom and make sure everybody gets their fair day in court.
This entire campaign for judge is about the injustice of the court system. As I said earlier, the system is broken. It's broken because those who are in charge, who are making decisions, do so because they have friends, they have family, and they protect them. You talk about the most grave injustice I had when I represented Judge Conchu. Those were bogus, trumped-up charges, and I got those all dismissed. And then when I got into the prosecutor's office, because I dared to run and I dared to stand up, you can't believe the stuff that came out of the woodwork. I have submitted to the Attorney General's office a 50-page single-spaced document with 50 footnotes and 75 exhibits for the Attorney General, the FBI Corruption Division, as well as the Michigan Grievance Commission to investigate the ethical and criminal wrongdoing of that prosecutor's office. And the other injustice I have involves Justus Scott himself. He was involved with the fixing, if you will, of a case involving his brother-in-law. The chief law enforcement, the chief financial officer of this county got his second drunk driving offense. And the case got dismissed because of Judge Scott's involvement. Ask Judge Scott about what he did to do about that. You should know about the favoritism and the special treatment those get. And if you insist on having let me say that over. Did you see that come right in front of my face? Here, she almost hit me in the nose. Here. Anyway, I think I've said enough.
Judge Scott, you can submit a rebuttal if you'd like.
Okay, as you notice again, he doesn't answer the question. This is what happens when people don't know the question. They throw out smoke and mirrors and say, look over there, look at this, instead of actually answering the question. This is nonsense. This is dirty politics. This is the lowest thing. He claims, I've never seen it, he's filed some sort of grievance right before an election when it's too late to respond to it, too late to have it resolved, too late to have it investigated prior to the election. Just dirty politics instead of answering the questions and telling you people why he's better qualified to run for judge.
Okay, again, I just want to say this one time. We're here to tell people why you should have the job instead of somebody else. This isn't a debate between two people. Please try to refrain from doing that, okay? Thank you very much. I respect both of you guys. Just handle it that way.
Mr. Sharkey, I think it's your turn to go first. What would you do to protect children and their parents against Child Services' own interests and failures to protect children in their care?
It's a pretty broad question. It presumes that there is, if I understand the question correctly, that there is some motivation or preconceived notion by protective services, I gather, for that. That process actually starts in the prosecuting attorney's office, which we're in charge of. And petitions have to be filed with the probate court, and they're filed by our office. So we get about 6,000 files through our office, criminal offenses, support issues, neglect and abuse types of cases. And those cases have to be, each and every one of those have to be examined and reviewed. And we don't authorize a petition, we don't authorize a criminal complaint, misdemeanor, felony, or otherwise without a thorough review. So that's the first step that has to take place. And if we sense that somebody is using the system, and that does happen, and sometimes you see it in the divorce setting, where there's an allegation by one party over the other that there's sexual misconduct by one party. And we see those. Those are sometimes very difficult to spot. But that's one example of an abuse of the system that we try to ferret out. There are other examples about that as well, that hopefully we've done it. And then the process also requires that there be at least an opportunity before any final disposition or decision is made on a case to where the defense, if there is a defense, lets us know. Sometimes I look at the process and see that we make decisions in a vacuum. And I just almost got assaulted again with the stop car.
Question, what you do to protect children that aren't being protected?
Yes, what would you do to protect children and their parents against Child Services' own interests and failure to protect children in their care?
Protecting them against Child Services.
That's what the question says.
Okay. They have a right to a trial. They have a right to a jury trial, not even in front of me. So every abuse and neglect case, on the initial adjudication, we appoint an attorney for each parent. We appoint a separate attorney for the child to make sure the child's separate interests are represented by an independent lawyer. Then the parents have a right, I read them the petition, they have a right to a trial on that petition to determine in front of a jury whether they are responsible for those allegations or not. If they're not responsible, we don't take jurisdiction. They take their children and walk out the door. If there's a trial or they plead to allegations in the petition, then we take jurisdiction, We get resources from the community to try to correct whatever the problem is. If it's substance abuse, we have them drug tested, we get them assessed, we get treatment. If there's poor treatment in the home, we get parent aides who work with them and go right in the home and work with them on a daily basis and provide transportation, help with jobs, help with budgeting. If it's mental health, we make sure they get a psychological evaluation. We send them to community mental health, and we deal with those problems. If after a year of those services they haven't corrected it, then the department can file a petition to terminate parental rights. At that trial, the standard is clear and convincing evidence, a very high standard. Again, everybody's got an attorney, and they have a right to a trial to defend themselves. Our system, while you get these allegations that people are picked on, they have a lot of rights to protect their rights, and I make sure I stand up to the Department of Health and Human Services every day.
What are your thoughts on the Homes Youthful Training Act?
I don't use it in juvenile court. It allows for a plea with probation, and then eventually they can have their record expunged. But the problem is then they come in for probation and say, well, I didn't really admit to anything. Well, in juvenile court, you can't treat them. Our goal is treatment, not just punishment. We want to treat them, we want to rehabilitate them. If they're saying, I didn't do anything wrong, then the treatment doesn't really work. So I require a plea, and then the prosecutor has the option to make part of that plea agreement that if after a year, if you've completed all the requirements, you haven't gotten in trouble again, you can petition the court to have your case dismissed or lowered, depending on the prosecutor's option. That works better because then they admit their wrongdoing. They can work with the probation officer to work on what they actually did, and we have success in trying to rehabilitate them.
Homes Youthful Training Act is a state statute, a legislative act where the public policy issue about what do we do with youthful offenders. Youthful offenders, we believe, in this criminal justice system, as dictated by the legislature, is to give someone the benefit of their error as a consequence. And what I like about that, and why I use it, and why I'm the first to use it since I've been the prosecutor, and that's why Justice Scott sort of stumbles about it, because he doesn't know about it because he never used it before. The YTA and the 7411 are diversionary programs for first-time offenders. And here's the beauty of it. The beauty of it is that they earn it. Now, I may be old-fashioned in the sense that your dad or my dad told me, look, I'd like some money for, I got a hot date on Friday. And say, well, what do you mow the grass or you do something? You just don't hand it out. But if you earn the right to have your case dismissed because of your efforts to go through the process, go through the probationary terms, you get the benefit of it. Otherwise, what we have is what I call the evil necessity of the criminal justice process. We call it plea bargains. Plea bargains. The problem with plea bargains is that you get the benefit up front. If you get the benefit up front, the next time you come through the process, you're looking for the same thing. That's why we have 30, 40, 50, 60 prior offenses. And so I believe in it. I think it's the right thing to do.
Mr. Sharkey pled to 3 young men from Zimmer School to Holmes Youthful Training. And then when they got probation, as he said that program's designed to, he wrote a long letter to the press on how the courts are broken and that Judge Haloka did something totally inappropriate. Mr. Sharkey controlled that entire plea process. He could have went to trial. He could have convicted them directly of the charge, and they would have went to prison. But he pleads them to Holmes Youthful Training, allowing probation, and then complains when they get probation. Again, we feel it doesn't work right in our court.
I'm glad you brought up the Zimmer 3 issue. That's what I call it, the Zimmer 3. This is the new norm. This is what we're going to be seeing in the future in our schools, in our criminal justice system. Threats of terrorism that threaten the safety of our children. Somebody has to do so. I obtained guilty pleas on 3 defendants. I had them admit under oath that this was no joke. And then when the recommendation from the probation department said 2 years in prison, the court gave them probation on a tether and then lifted the tether without giving notice to anyone. And you're right, I did complain about it.
Do you think the court system is working, or do you believe the justice system is breaking down? And what are the biggest changes you think we need to make to the justice system?
I think I wrote that question myself. I've been waiting for this one. Here. Listen, I'm running for this office because I feel so compelled to step up and make a difference. We need to improve things. We have prosecutors and judges who are in these positions, and they never leave. They feel that they're entitled to these positions, and when you feel like you're entitled, you give up. You're not looking for the justice on how to do the right thing, and you get you fall into what I believe is a trap about making decisions that you shouldn't. I'm running because I believe the system should be fair to all. Everyone should get a fair shake. Your daughter or your son or you're in the court system, you should have a fair shake. You shouldn't be worried about getting the short end of the stick because somebody has got special connections to the court to make a decision. I don't give favors. I've been asked. I've been asked all the time, but I don't give favors to anyone who asks for them. Everybody gets treated the same, and I have a record to back that up.
Well, unlike my opponent, I think we have a great system. We have a great system that works because you can take a criminal statute that was enacted in 1875 and apply it right here in this community today, and you have a right, if it's a felony, to a jury of 12 people from this community who decide that case based on how this community looks at things, based on today's morals, and you then get a fair shake, not from a judge, but from a jury of your peers. That's what makes our system great, is it's adaptable no matter when the statute was enacted. It's adaptable to right now, to this community, with a jury of your peers that you can address, you can talk to, you can explain your story and the reasons why you did what you did and get a verdict. That's what makes our system great.
Judge Scott, you get the first one, get to answer this first this time.
Okay.
What is your response to the opioid problem?
Well, I've already addressed part of that. We take it very seriously. We have an opioid epidemic in this country. Since 1999, 700,000 people have died from opioid addiction, and it's gotten dramatically worse since the fentanyl got into the drugs, and people are dying in epidemic proportions. We have to take that seriously. That's why the judges in our community, we've developed the drug court to deal with that problem seriously. So these people, you know, it's easy to say, oh, make them responsible. Don't give them a free ride. These aren't bad people. These are your sons and daughters. This is the kid that lives next door. I went to the same fan meeting that he did, and it was 3 kids from Lapeer East who graduated, who all said, well, I started out with marijuana and alcohol because that's what everybody did, and pretty soon I started taking pills, and then they're taking heroin, and then they're hopelessly addicted. These aren't people from somewhere else. This is our community. We have to save the lives of our youth because that's our future. We have a duty to do this. So instead of just saying, don't give them a free ride, jam them all, our philosophy, Judge Holoka, myself, Judge Barnard, we treat them. We do everything we can to help them get off that addiction. I do the same thing in my intensive probation where we bring community resources to the juvenile delinquents, and the same thing with the abuse and neglect cases where we bring the same community resources to help these people beat this horrible addiction. This is serious business.
We have a drug problem in this country, in this state, in this community. Each and every one of us have people who are affected by drugs and addiction or alcohol. And we're all quite frustrated by the process. But these issues have to be resolved with a combination of efforts. These are medical issues. These are mental health issues. These are social service issues. And I'm in the court as the prosecuting attorney when they commit crimes. That is the process where it starts. And I think there has to be a line, and you might appreciate that because there's a considerable cost involved. I have a fundamental disagreement about how we deal with these people. First-time offenders, yes, give them the benefit of the doubt, give them all the treatment that we can. Let's turn them around. On those, we have a shot at doing it. But that's not what this drug court that's being used in our court, that Judge Scott and Judge Barnard and Judge Holoka are supportive of. They're supportive of it because the Department of Corrections is trying to unload those in the prison system and put them back in the local communities. Putting them back in your neighborhood is something that I've been standing up and opposing. We don't need somebody who is scoring on a criminal offense in the prison system to be in the drug court system. We have limited seats, 10, 20, and these are grant-funded positions. We don't need to waste our resources on those we have no chance of succeeding with. The Department of Corrections will tell you they have a 10, 20, 30% chance of succeeding in the drug court.
There is a countrywide problem with the failings of Child Protective Services. Most importantly, a failure to investigate social workers lying on the stand. Do you think a social worker who lies or fabricates on the stand should be allowed absolute immunity? And as a judge, what would you do to remedy that?
All right, interesting question. It's broader in scope than what the question seems to suggest. First of all, as the prosecutor, I'm on the enforcement end of the of the criminal justice system. I enforce the law. I don't make the law, and I don't have an opinion, nor should I have an opinion on what the legislature tells us what the law is. So if immunity is granted to a social worker, that's not my doing. That's the doing of the legislature. Now, fundamentally, I don't like it when anybody takes a stand and lies. But there's a joke, and it's not a funny one. When we have to try a case, there can't be two sides of the story. There's one. And how you get there is what the jury system is all about, or a judge makes a decision. And that has to be sorted out as to who is telling the truth.
I have no idea what he's talking about. There is no immunity for anyone to perjure themselves in any court in this country. Neglect abuse workers or anyone. And if they're caught lying in my court, they would be reported and they would never testify in my court again. I have the ability to remove contract workers. We require a supervisor from Department of Health and Human Services be present at every hearing, so they hear it also. If someone perjures themselves, I have a duty to report it. As a defendant said to Judge Holoka a long time ago, who's on the witness stand, Judge Holoka said, "Do you know what perjury is?" And he said, "Yeah, 14 years." And that's what it is. It's a 14-year felony. It's very serious. It is the basis of our entire system. Our entire system is based on people telling the truth, and we expect a higher standard from Department of Health and Human Services workers. They have an important responsibility to go out and investigate and protect children, but they also have a responsibility to tell the truth and not lie, and I would not tolerate it from anybody.
Do you believe that as an elected official, you should be available at the office 9 to 5, Monday through Friday?
Yes. I'm not only there 9 to 5, I'm usually working through lunch. I work late all the time. We have cases come in. I do what's required. We get calls on the weekend, calls at night. I have to do pickup orders on mentally ill. This isn't just a job, it's an adventure. I do the job. This is who I am. I am the probate judge. It's not just a job for me. I take it very seriously. I always have. As prosecutor, I took calls all the time for search warrants, advising the police, should we go into a house, we got an arrest, we got a problem. I was always available 24/7. I went in every Christmas morning with my wife, who ran the Meyer store. She went and checked on the parakeets. I went to the sheriff's department and issued warrants for people who got arrested. These jobs, we are on call 24/7, 365 days, and we take it very seriously.
Those in the criminal justice system do so for reasons other than the paycheck. If you were to count the hours that I, as the prosecutor, and my assistants put in, you would be scratching your head and say, there's an easier way to make a living. People who are in this business, most of them, and I'm proud to say, do so for the right reasons. They have a commitment to doing what they believe is right. It isn't the paycheck. The job itself as prosecutor and assistant prosecutor and judge requires that they do be available 24/7. And that's the way it has to be, because in the criminal justice system, crime doesn't happen between 9 to 5, for crying out loud. It happens in the evening. It happens on the weekend. And somebody has to be available. And we are.
Guns in schools, should they be allowed, and if so, who should have them?
I think that's Justice's question. Let me speak to that issue from, again, an understanding on the role of both a judge and a prosecutor. My opinions on a public policy issue should be irrelevant. My job as the prosecutor is to enforce the law. And that's a decision that has to be made by a school board and the administration as to what their communities think is the best thing for keeping the kids safe in their schools. I will tell you, though, I'm part of the our schools. We just had a meeting with the out at the ISD, and all the superintendents and all the chiefs of police were all present. Of course, I was present as well, because I am the chief law enforcement officer of this community here, and those decisions are being raised. They brought in an expert, and an expert said he didn't think that that was the right thing to do. And a whole host of reasons way beyond my skill level or understanding on how that process works. But that has to be done through the schools, and each superintendent for each school district has to deal with that issue throughout the state and throughout the country.
I'm a hunter. I have a concealed pistol license. I'm a member of the NRA. But I also swore under oath, my right hand, to uphold the laws of the state of Michigan and the Constitution. It's not up to me whether there are guns in the school. If there were guns in the school, people who don't want them, people who aren't trained in them, by no means should be told they have to have them. That would be a disaster. If the legislature, if the school board decides that that's appropriate and people are trained properly to carry weapons in the school, that's not up for me to decide. I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that. But it'd have to be strict training with people who want to do it, people who know what they're doing, and people who aren't afraid of guns. The last thing we want is someone who's not confident with a gun, because chances are it will be taken from them, and that's a disaster also. It's a crisis. Our sheriff has done a great job. He's been to every school in this community talking about gun safety. We are fortunate to have law enforcement who's deeply involved in this and doing everything they can. Our school superintendents, they're looking at every option from every end of the spectrum to try to prevent this type of thing from happening. But if the law is passed and the school board approves it in a given community, I'm going to follow the law. I'm certainly not going to be opposed to it.
Do you believe the current system for disciplining lawyers and judges is effective? Why or why not?
I've never been disciplined, 39 years. I treat people honestly and fairly. So I don't have a personal experience, but I do know that there's a system built in where anyone can file a grievance. It is thoroughly and completely investigated, and then they take action. A judge is being removed right now who got into a car accident, who was a hit and run, and they left the scene. There's a complaint filed against him. That's being investigated and looked into and being dealt with. As far as I know, there's a system in place that works. Everybody's listened to. They're independent investigators who investigate the entire complaint. They do it very thoroughly. They take their time. They find the right answer, and then they make the appropriate decision to make sure that it's dealt with appropriately. So I believe there's a process in place that works.
The question is, could you repeat that, please?
Do you believe the current system for disciplining lawyers and judges is effective? Why or why not?
The answer is no. I don't think it's an effective process. I don't have the explanation for that other than maybe it's a lack of resources. But let me give you some statistics. In the Judicial Tenure Commission, just last year they had like 560 complaints against judges. 4 were reviewed. 4 were reviewed. And what happened to those 4 that were reviewed? 3 were sanctioned. 1 had to pay some fines and costs. Another had to take a 30-day suspension. And some other sort of slap on the wrist. There was a study done recently for prosecuting attorneys who deliberately deliberately withheld exculpatory evidence in a criminal case. Some 600 prosecutors were reviewed. 1 prosecutor was charged and spent 30 days in jail. Now, these are cases where evidence, exculpatory evidence, means evidence that would exonerate someone from a crime. And nothing happens to them. That's why I'm running. I don't have faith in the system to protect you. I think the best way to deal with judges and prosecutors who don't do their job, who do not treat people fairly, is in the voting booth.
How you're doing it. Doing it. So after that now, hopefully they'll be able to stay around for a little while. If you have any other questions you want to ask them, you can ask. Are you okay with that? Okay. We've got 3 more questions.
Is there any penalty for bringing groundless charges to the Judicial Tenure Committee?
I'm not sure how to, that presumes certain things. The question, I suspect, groundless. The Judicial Tenure Commission, as I just told you, sorted out just last year some 500 plus cases, and they summarily dispose of cases. There are circumstances where someone's just not happy with the decision by a judge and they file a grievance against the judge. And I suspect that those are the same. The same is true for lawyers. The Michigan Grievance Commission for Attorneys does the same thing. They sort those issues out and they summarily dispose of them. What are the consequences of somebody putting a false allegation? I suspect we'll have to wait and see because I've never heard of one. They are summarily dismissed. I've had it happen to me twice. Ever since I decided to represent the judge, my opponent played dirty. Not this opponent, but my opponent when I was running for prosecutor filed 2 grievances against me. I have a spotless record, and I had to defend myself, and I did so, and those were dismissed. Is there any consequence to them? I don't know.
I'm not aware of any consequence, although a person could try to gain political advantage with false allegations that I expect will be summarily dismissed, as he said, because they're nonsense. There should be. Maybe there'll be a new law after this, where people who falsely and maliciously bring false allegations, there should be accountable. But as yet, there isn't.
Would you support sanctuary cities here? And if a crime was committed by someone who is here illegally, how would you handle that?
Again, as a judge, I'm sworn to uphold the law. So that's not my call to decide on sanctuary to cities or whether that's good or bad. My job is to enforce the law as it's written. I don't get to decide what I like or what my personal feelings are or should someone get favoritism or not. I have to enforce the law as it's written. That's my job. So I don't get to pick and choose. If someone breaks the law, I interpret it based on the facts and enforce the law.
Could you repeat the question again?
Would you support sanctuary cities here, and if someone was here illegally and broke the law, how would you handle that situation?
I think that's a good question and a fair question to ask your legislature. These aren't issues for judges or prosecutors. Prosecutors are sworn to uphold the law and enforce it. There's a criminal act that's committed, we need to review it, and we need to review it taking into consideration a whole host of variables. And a judge who is presented with a case before it has to faithfully follow the law. A judge's opinion or perspective, whatever bias he has or she has in any type of case, that has to be set aside. We're supposed to follow the law. That's our job as both prosecutors and judges. We don't have the discretion to substitute what our own personal beliefs are. And you wouldn't want a system of justice like that.
Last question would be, how do you define injustice?
How much, did you say 30 minutes? I got 30 seconds on that. Jeez, oh Pete, what a question. I have 2 minutes here. How do you define injustice? That's the question. I think we've talked about it. I think we've talked about it enough here tonight here. My concern for each and every one of my clients that I'd represented before any court, any state court, any federal court, any appellate court, was that they got a fair shake. And what I mean by a fair shake is that there was no bias, there was no influence, and there was no connection who somebody had the upper hand and they weren't treated fairly. And you know why I ran for the prosecutor position, and that's why I'm running for judge. I think I can do the job because I've been committed to it, I've been tested, and if anybody, any of you, any relatives of yours, come before me, if I just so happen to be humbly voted into office, then you can expect that they will be treated fairly. No favors to anyone. You'll all be treated the same.
Injustice is an unfair result when someone takes advantage of the system, someone exaggerates things that aren't true and uses them for his own benefit. Mr. Sharkey was kind enough to bring his campaign literature. There's a picture here with him shaking hands with the Supreme Court judges from 11 years ago. They came to town to hear a case. I orchestrated. The local attorneys who were present asked them if they wanted to have their picture taken as a courtesy. They were told this was not to be used for political purposes. It was a memento of the justices being here. The judge he's shaking hands with is Cliff Taylor, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Judge in the background is the current Chief Justice, Steve Markman. Other judge, Robert Taylor, the immediate past Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Those three have all endorsed me for this election. And Mike Sharkey uses a picture that he was told not to with people who endorsed me on his campaign literature. That's injustice.
You can have a rebuttal.
Thank you. This is the last question. Noticed how that came up at the end. The idea was I wouldn't get to be able to respond. This is complete nonsense. And if this is the best they've got against me, then by God, they can have that one. There's a picture in my campaign of me standing with the Supreme Court justices. Not a single person is named in it, not a single endorsement. And if you can't see somebody shaking the hand of another, then you must need a pair of glasses. Because I'm not shaking Cliff Taylor's hand. Cliff Taylor is not endorsing me, and I don't want his endorsement. And the reason I don't want his endorsement is because he doesn't know anything about me. And he doesn't know anything about Justice Scott, and neither do any of those who are endorsing him. They're recruited. They're recruited to line up as if they are all have some knowledge about him. They don't have any knowledge about him.
I personally talked to each one of those judges. Cliff Taylor called me up and said, this was terrible, this was low-down, dirty politics, and he was upset by it. So, yes, they do know me. They have personally endorsed me, and that's not true.
Okay, we're going to have time now for closing, right? How much time we have for closing? Is it 3 minutes? Each candidate, thank you both. You did a nice job. Let's give them a hand. You talked for an hour and some very difficult questions and stuff, and I commend you both. We're going to give each one of you 3 minutes for closing here. Who do you want to start with, moderator?
Justice Scott.
Justice. Welcome Justice up here again, please.
This is my third event today. I started at 7:30 in the morning. I'm the chairman of the board of the hospital. By the way, great news. We're going to build a $28 million new medical facility, and we're going to join with Michigan State University Medical School, Central Michigan University Medical School, and bring students into the community for our community in the hospital. But then I went to Almont and gave a presentation to the Almont Chamber of Commerce about probate. We do this every night. I go around the county making a presentation. My opponent hasn't seen fit to do that. I'm here with a positive message about my record, what I've done for this community over 39 years, fighting hard, gaining real experience. You need the real experience in order to understand how to be the probate judge, how to determine if someone's telling the truth or lying, how to make the right decision regarding these important issues about your children, your life, your family. That's why I'm a probate judge. I've dedicated my life to it, and as I said in the beginning, of listening, genuinely listening to people and trying to help them, not making up my mind ahead of time, and not saying smoke and mirrors, look over here, instead of answering your questions tonight. Thank you very much. I hope for your support November 6th.
Thank you for showing up tonight and participating in this process. This is a necessary process. This is the democratic way on how we vote and put people in positions of importance that relate to decisions that affect the safety of this community the individual lives. And I think you need someone in these positions who has the integrity and who has the backbone to stand up and do the right thing. I didn't have to throw my hat in the ring to be the prosecutor. I didn't have to throw my hat in the ring to be the probate judge. I did so because my feelings are heartfelt, and I believe that we need a new system of justice, and I think we need new people in charge. I encourage you to get involved, but I know you all have busy lives, but we need people to stand up, and I'm willing to do that. And I appreciate you coming out, and I appreciate your support, and I'll see you on the campaign trail.
Okay, before we go on to the drawing here, we got a couple candidates that are in the office there, and as you know, when we have Tea Party meetings, we always let the other candidates that are here give them a couple minutes to update us on what's going on in Lansing or wherever they're from. It could be the U.S. Congress. So first, I'd like to have Kevin Daly come up. He's running for representative, or senator, sorry, senator. Give him a hand, please.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate giving the chance to and I promise I'll only take a minute or two, but first I want to thank these guys. I'll tell you what, it's really nice to be on this side of the table for once. For the last 6-8 months, I've been up there on these things a lot of times. It's nice to sit on this side, and thank you guys for what you're doing and running for these offices. Let's give them a hand again, please. But then I want to just say thank you to everybody in the room, the support that I had in this last election. Thank you for that support. And going on to the election in November, I hope that I can earn the rest of the support, the people that are supporting my opponent in the primary. I hope you'll come on board and support me in November. I've been up in Bay City today at a county commission meeting up there. I can tell you that my opponent is trying to get other people to fill in at these forums that we're going to have the next month. It's interesting that the former Jim Barsha, for those of you that know, came up to me and said, you know, I've been requested to fill in for her at some forums. And I said, why would you fill in for a candidate? I mean, that would be like Mike not showing up tonight and getting Judge Holoka to come fill in for him. It just doesn't make any sense, does it? So anyways, we are... anyways, that just doesn't make any sense. So that's what we're dealing with. And I just wanted to mention real quickly, and then I'll go sit down. When we talked about sanctuary cities, and I can tell you this much, sanctuary cities are against the law, right? If we are going to be a country, we are going to have to be a country of laws, and we don't enforce laws in this country. We all drive down the road going 10 miles over the speed limit. They don't enforce the speed limit law. To that level, we have to enforce laws in this country, and we have to stand up and say that we're going to enforce those laws. We shouldn't have any sanctuary cities, no sanctuary states, and the federal government needs to get off their behind and go after these people that do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Now I'd like to introduce a person that's well known also, Gary Howell, our representative from Lansing.
Thank you, everyone. I want to particularly thank the Tea Party organization. You know, as Kevin mentioned, there's lots of forums we all participate in, but this is one that is run with ethics, and it's a real educational opportunity for all of our citizens. And I commend the Tea Party for doing this. I commend the candidates for being here, and I definitely commend you folks for coming out on an evening. You could stay home and watch TV and ignore all this, but thank God you don't do that. Next month, I will be speaking here at the Tea Party. These two gentlemen, as you heard, are ethically unable to really take a position on some public policy issues. That's not the case for me. I'm your state representative. I'm in the legislature, and I tell it like I believe it is. So next week, ask any question you want, and you're going to hear an answer. Hopefully, you'll like most of them. In any case, thank you very much for being here, and God bless you all.
Thanks, Gary. Very good. Rain. Gary on an appointment? Gary have an opponent? Yes, he does. His name is... I tried to get him here, and I haven't been able to get him. Okay, his name is Chris Giles. Well, don't break his arm because you're going to have to use it. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I have one more person that's running here, and then this is Maurice. It actually looks like I got two, so you're going to have to bear with me for a couple more minutes here. We have two great candidates here. Maurice is running for the school board, right, Maurice? Okay. Let's give him a hand, please.
Just briefly, these gentlemen here talked about some issues, some issues with the guns in the school and so forth. I'm running for the school board because I have been asked to do so. I have experience to do so. We're talking about the youth of our community, the opioid crisis, children with health issues, some curriculum changes that I would like to see to advance the efforts of the policies that would be good. My literature is on the back table. I would ask for your support, and I appreciate the debate that these two gentlemen put on. And I will say this, with all the people here that helped support me, I became an alternate delegate to the convention. And I am very pleased to be part of this Tea Party issue. And there's many people in this audience that got me much involved. But Tim is the one that worked very, very diligently with the Republican Party to get many of the people to debate. And I have saw at the convention how successful we were to nominate in Lapeer many of the candidates that you see slated on the November ballot. And it is very, very crucial that we elect those candidates. And I applaud Tim for his very, very diligent efforts of doing that. So I just want to make, and I ask for your support.
Thanks, Maurice. I'll give you the $10 later. This next gentleman here is a good man. He's running for commissioner, right? Give him a hand, please.
Hello, Brendan Miller. I'm running for County Commission, District 1. That is Deerfield Township, Marathon Township, and Rich Township. I just want to bring up three quick things. One, I think we have an issue in this county when it comes to first impressions. Now, let me give you an example of a first impression. Last meeting I was here, some people thought that I was a supporter of the devil. True story. I was wearing a T-shirt that had a demon on it. What people didn't realize is there was a bullet hole through it. It was a demon hunter, a Christian band that I support. Now, why do I bring this up? Why do I talk about this crazy thing? Well, because first impressions are critical, and unfortunately right now I think Lapeer County has a first impressions problem. I think when businesses or anybody takes a look at the county press, takes a look at local news, they see negativity. They see not local issues that will affect them, but issues that affect just a handful of people. We need to change that, and that's what my focus will be if I have the opportunity to be elected county commission for that district. Bringing local issues to the forefront, issues like together. I have received the endorsements of every member of the Columbia Village Council. Now, why is that important? Because that council is represented by 4 Republicans and 3 Democrats. I'm a Republican, by the way, and I take that very seriously. I've been endorsed by Democrats in Otter Lake. I've been endorsed by Democrats, Independents, and everybody else on this campaign trail. Why? Because I'm not making this about Republican. I'm not making this about Democrat. I'm making this about making Lapeer County a better place and improving the lives of the people in my district. I hope I can have your vote. I'd really appreciate it. Once again, Brendan Miller, District 1. Thank you.